in an integration,
Yep,
authentication plays an important part.
very
So
much so.
according to you, what is the most suitable authentication right now in ServiceNow?
Yep.
There are various
Yeah.
ways, right? Mutual and
Oh
all and
yeah.
all. So what is the
Yeah.
most suitable?
Suitable. I mean, look, yeah, it's OAuth first, right? Like if you're gonna go with I mean, if you're gonna go um start with OAuth, if you could start with an OAuth integration, that's the way to go. And the reason I say that is you're talking about signed tokens, you're talking about having a pattern that is set and secured. It is a handshake that is, uh, I mean, really cryptographically signed from both sides. So from a security standpoint, we're talking about having the most secure option. Now, I'm not going to say that OAuth is completely unbreakable and no one's ever going to like. That's not
Right.
what I'm saying. I'm saying from a um, go forward standpoint, OAuth is going to be your best bet. That's where you should start. So if you're going to try to say, you know, from an order of operations, where should I start my integration and authentication kind of mechanism? OAuth is where you start, right?
Okay.
Always try to start with OAuth. If the vendor doesn't support OAuth, if the vendor is hesitant to OAuth, or maybe your architecture doesn't support OAuth, which is totally fine. That does
Right.
happen, right? Um, then you're going to want to do basic auth probably as a close second. And we're talking about token based OAuth or token based auth, right? You don't want to do basic auth from like a uh, 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 the the base 64 encoded like username and password kind of a thing. Like you want to do a refresh token. Like and when I say basic auth, I'm talking about a refresh token that gets cycled out every once in a while, right? Like once every couple of days, hopefully. That you can do a cycle through where you basically say, here's my bearer token, give me an OAuth token back, or give me a token back, which I think is still technically an OAuth flow, but I can't remember.
Okay.
There is a flow that happens where you can basically say, here's my refresh token, give me a bearer token back. And it's a little bit simpler. You don't sign the tokens. I don't remember if you do that back and forth, but there is a token mechanism basically where you say, here's my API token, give me a, a bearer token back.
Okay.
And again, not every vendor is going to support that. Next one down the chain is we're going to do basic OAuth with username and password, and you're going to base 64 encode it. The reason that's not going to be so great is that not everyone's going to want to support password change every 60 days, right? But
Right.
you're going to want to look for something that I mean, if you want to go in and manually recycle the password every 60 days, that's something you're going to want to look at. And I would assume that your IT, your CISO, or your security team is going to go, shame on you, right? Like we're going to have to cycle that every 60 days or 90 days or whatever your security policy is going to set. So, again, it's look at what your security policies are going to set and figure that out. If you're doing an ARB process, if you're doing change management process, it's going to be tough sell, but you're going to have to kind of go with what the vendor supports. So
Okay.
again, you're kind of at the mercy of the vendor, but if you can do some sort of cycling, that is better than just set it and forget it. And then 10 years later, you find out that your API key's been hacked and someone's been using it for the last 10
Right.
years. Um, but yeah, cycle, have a cycle once a quarter, once a whatever, and then make sure that that key gets cycled every once in a while. Um, Other than that, I mean, if we're talking about no auth or no auth whatsoever, and we're talking about an open API, like we should probably all sit down and have a conversation, like, and make sure your endpoints are HTTP encrypted, make sure that they're TLS 1.2, make sure like, all the basics are there, people. Like we need to make sure that we're hold your vendors' feet to the flames. Like we don't accept things that aren't properly secured. We don't,
Okay.
even if you're going over a VPN and it's layer 7, which isn't a good idea, because what happens when that VPN goes down, right? Like even if it's over a VPN, you can still ask for a self-signed SSL certificate just in case.
Right.
There's things like that, right? Like you don't have to accept that this is the solution. You can still ask questions. So I would say, go through that hierarchy, for authentication, and at the end of the day, make sure that you're doing what's best for your instance. And
Okay.
if it doesn't smell good, if you're like, oh, I don't know, this seems a little dodgy, don't accept it. Make sure make sure you're doing what's best for your instance.
Right.